Hi and Assalamualaikum. So today I will talk about crime against humanity. First of all, my name is Jannatul Husna binti Hasan Aghare. My metric number is 060090. Okay, for the first part is the introductions. The term crimes against humanity refers to systematic or pervasive criminal activities that flagrantly violate human rights and are carried out by or on behalf of a de facto authority, typically a state. Contrary to war crimes, crime against humanity may not necessarily occur during wartime and refer to institutionalized rather than individual activities. Even though crime against humanity can be committed by or on behalf of authorities, they can only need to be tolerated by authorities. No official policy needs to be involved. The Nuremberg trial saw the first prosecutions for crimes against humanity. Following the Holocaust, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights established an international standard for human rights that was initially deemed suitable for use in law. The political pathologies connected to crimes against the humanity are expressed by political groups or states that violate or encourage violations of the human rights norm listed in the declarations. Crime against humanity, in contrast to war crimes, can occur both in times of peace and war. Because they are a result of a government policy, even though the perpetrators need not identify themselves with the policy, or because they represent a common practice of atrocities that are approved or supported by a government or a de facto power. They are not isolated or irregular acts. Crime against humanity may include war crimes, murder, massacres, dehumanizations, genocide, ethnic cleansing, deportation, unethical human experimentation, and many other acts if they are a part of a widespread or systematic pattern of behavior. So, move on to the background of the crime against humanity. Crimes against humanity, or CAH, have developed under customary international law as opposed to genocide and war crimes, which have been enshrined in treaties. The term crimes against humanity was used for the first time by Theodore Parker, a Unitarian minister and abolitionist, when he delivered a sermon titled a New Crime Against Humanity on Sunday, June 4, 1854, at the Music Hall in Boston. He did that in opposition to the legal proceedings that allowed Anthony Burns to be returned from Boston to Alexandria, Virginia, following the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Aside that, aside from that, in a letter to the U.S. Secretary of State, American minister, politician, and historian George Washington Williams referred to the atrocities carried out in the Congo Free State by Leopold II of Belgium's government in 1890s as crimes against humanity. Although it is frequently asserted, this was not the first time the term was used in the English language in its current connotations. U.S. President Harrison referred to the slave trade in Africa as a crime against humanity. In his first annual message in December 1889, George Washington Williams first used his phrase in his view on slavery in the United States in 1883. A tribunal to judge violations of the laws of humanity was suggested through the end by an international war crimes panel. However, the U.S. delegations objected to mentions of the rule of humanity as being vague and underdeveloped at that time. Therefore, the idea was not pursued. Next, under the Nuremberg Tribunal Charter, crimes against humanity were first accused in both the Nuremberg ruling and the Charter. The definition of crime against humanity is state the idea of crime against humanity was accepted by the UN General Assembly in 1946 due to the International Criminal Tribunal Yugoslavia International Criminal Tribunal Rwanda and ICC's legal precedents, the definition of crimes against humanity has changed since World War II. The majority of the crime the majority of the time, crimes against humanity are reflected in the statutes of international tribunals as they were under customary international law. The statutes of the various international tribunals do, however, differ slightly in terms in the contextual conditions for crimes against humanity. In order to try those responsible for crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide, the international community set up special courts in the 1990s. This included the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Rape and torture were included in the list of crimes against humanity by the ICTY and ICTR, unlike earlier international tribunals. So I will move on to the Armenian genocide. First to be formally denounced as a crime against humanity, the Armenian genocide was mentioned in the Triple Entente Proclamations from May 1950. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire deliberately destroyed the Armenian people and their culture, which is known as the Armenian genocide. It was carried out chiefly through the forcible conversion of Armenian women and children to Islam, which was spearheaded by the ruling Committee of Union and Progress (CUP), and the mass murder of about 1 million Armenians on death marches into the Syrian desert. Armenians held a protected but inferior position in Ottoman society before World War I. Armenians were the victim of massive atrocities in the 1890s and 1909. Following a string of military setbacks and territory losses for the Ottoman Empire, particularly the Balkan Wars of 1912 until 1913, CUP officials began to worry that the Armenians, whose homeland in the eastern provinces was seen as the soul of the Turkish people, might declare independence. In 1914, local Armenians were killed by Ottoman paramilitaries as they invaded Persian and Russian territories. Ottoman authorities saw sporadic signs of Armenian resistance indicative of general uprising, even though there was none. The purpose of mass deportations was to eliminate any chance of Armenian independence or autonomy. The Ottoman government imprisoned and expelled hundreds of academics and leaders from the Armenian community from Constantinople on April 24, 1915. Between 800,000 and 1.2 million Armenians are thought to have been taken on death marches to the Syrian desert in 1915 and 1916 under Talaat Pasha's orders. The deportees were robbed, raped, and killed while being forced onward by paramilitary escorts. They also suffered from a lack of food and water. The survivors were split up into detention camps in the Syrian deserts. Another round of atrocities was authorized in 1916, and by the end of the year, just roughly 200,000 deportees remained alive. Next one, the elements of the crime against humanity. According to Article 7, Clause 1 of the Rome Statute, crimes against humanity do not need to be linked to an armed conflict and can also occur in the peacetime, similar to the crime of genocide. That same article defines the crime as containing the following main element. The first one is physical elements. A physical element which include the commission of any of the following acts, such as murder, extermination, enslavement, imprisonment, torture, a grave form of sexual violence, deportation or possible transfer of population, prosecution, enforced disappearance of a person, the crime of apartheid, and other human acts. There are a few acts under the physical elements that I will explain. The first one is murder. Murder is the unlawful and intentional killing of a human being. Manslaughter refers to the intention to kill or to cause serious physical damage that is likely to result in death, yet the criminal is careless about whether death occurs. The appeals chamber acknowledged that the manslaughter in Pablo Strugar's case included both explicit and implicit kinds of purpose. Recovery of the body is not necessary to establish beyond a reasonable doubt that a person was murdered. A victim's death can be deduced circumstantially from the evidence, as was the case in Fofana's case. Additionally, the trial chamber ruled that circumstantial evidence was adequate if there were only reasonable inference in that the victim is dead as a result of the accused's act or omissions. The second one is extermination. Extermination, according to the state's case, has three things which are the elements of the crime of extermination: the massive killing of pupil, enthusiasts, the condition of living that would lead to their deaths, mens rea, and the accused's intentions, demonstrated by his actions or inactions, to either kill many people on a large scale, a subject many people to slavery, or subject many people to systematic slavery. Extermination is basically mass murder. According to Kayashima case, someone who murders a spree of mass murder and may be guilty of extermination. In the ICTR appeals chamber rule in the case of Entakirutimana state that extermination differs from murder in that it requires an element of mass destruction, which is not required for murder. The definition of mass, which can also mean large scale, does not imply a set minimum of fatalities, but rather should be assessed on a case-by-case basis using common sense. Extermination must also be collective and not merely directed at specific individuals, unlike genocidal acts, where the accused does not need to have intended to wipe out an entire group or a specific subset of a community. According to the ICTY in Bratnin and Crusted, the mass aspect refers to the possibility of establishing proof of the actus of extermination through the aggregations of distinct and unrelated occurrences or on an aggregated basis. It is not necessary to specifically identify victims by names or make reference to them by description according to the ICTR as indicated in the instance of Entakirutimana. Next, the third one, enslavements. The 1956 Slavery Convention served as a foundation for part of the concept of slavery. The exercise of any or all of the rights of the ownership of a person, exercise, and the international use of these powers constitute the ingredient of enslavement mens rea. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia (ICTY) has ruled that the element of slavery as a crime against humanity are the same as those of slavery as a violation of the laws or custom of war in the case of Kunarak. Enslavement is mostly determined by the nature of the relationship between the accused and the victim. According to what has been mentioned in the case of Kunarak, factors to take into account when determining the nature of the relationship, including the control of someone's movement and physical environment, psychological control, measures taken to prevent somebody's escape, force or threat, or the force of threat, or coercion, and many related actions to the enslavement. Usually, it is not enough to simply demonstrate that someone was captive. Other sides of slavery, such as exploitation, forced labor, sex, prostitution, or human trafficking, must also exist. For the second element is contextual element. Contextual element means when committed as a part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population. Widespread or systematic describe the nature of the attack, particularly its scope as its best. Widespread describe an attack's large-scale nature, which is primarily demonstrated by the number of casualties. An attack is not considered widespread until a certain number of a victim has been claimed. According to the precedents instances of Akiyasu, Rutaganda and Musema, widespread may comprise a gigantic, frequent, large-scale action carried out collectively with significant seriousness and targeted at a variety of victims. However, systematic alludes to the organized character of violence crimes and the recurrent occurrence of similar criminal behavior, according to the case Tadiq, Kunara, and others, and Entakirutimana. It entails a pattern or methodical strategy that is truly ordered and following a regular pattern. It is not necessary to prove that the attack was systematic or widespread, simply one of them. A crime against humanity can therefore be committed as a part of a massive assault on a civilian population that claim many lives as a part of ongoing deliberate violence or crime that claim fewer lives. For an execution of murder as a crime against humanity, there is no necessity that the individual prohibited acts be widespread or systematic, which means that as long as the prohibited activities are part of an attack that is broad or systematic, the individual prohibited acts do not need to be. And the last element is a mental element. Mental element means with knowledge of the attack. In this element, an accused person must know the larger context in which his or her actions occur in addition to have the intent to commit the underlying crime such as murder, prosecution, or torture. Persecutions. Most specifically, according to the case of Kunara and others, the accused must aware of two things. First one, be aware of the attack against the civilian population. And second, be aware that his or her criminal act is component of the attack or at the very least be willing. A crime against humanity is typically committed in connection with an incident that is widely publicized, making it impossible for the accused to convincingly claim ignorance of the offense. Inference can therefore be made from pertinent facts and circumstances to demonstrate knowledge. It doesn't matter if the accused intended for his action to be directed either at the targeted population or only at his victim. The attack itself must be directed at the large population, not the accused person's actions. All that is required of the accused is the knowledge that his actions are a component of the attack. Indicators of a rebuttable presumptions that he did not know that his actions were a part of the attack could, at most, be proof that he conducted the activities for solely personal motive. So, last one, conclusion. Therefore, in conclusion, the contextual component established that crimes against humanity involve either extensive violence in terms of the number of victims or its dispersions across a large geographic area, widespread, or methodical violence, systematic. This not this does not include sporadic, unintentional, or isolated acts of violence. Furthermore, according to Article 7, Class 2A of the Rome Statute, crimes against humanity must be committed as part of an attack that is authorized by a state or other organization's policy. The plans or policy need to be implied from the totality of the circumstances and does not need to be publicly stated or formally accepted. Crime against humanity, in contrast to genocide, need not be directed against a particular group. Any civilian populations, irrespective of affiliations or identification, may be the target of an attack. The requirement to establish a specific intent in the event of crimes against humanity is an distinction. The act may be carried out with just a simple intent, except for persecutions, which requires extra discriminatory intent. The offender must also act knowing that the attack is being made against the civilian population and that what they are doing is a part of the attack. That's all from me. Thank you.